I'd like to talk a little bit about my struggles with breastfeeding in the first couple of weeks after getting the baby. So my milk didn't come in right away. It hit me a couple days later, and that's when I started nursing. Like most first-time moms, I wasn't sure if I was doing it right. And initially, what I heard from my family was I wasn't making enough milk, I'm going to starve the baby. It was all this negative feedback right away that I had to supplement. And it was just all these different voices. And I just wanted to exclusively breastfeed for the first 6 months, possibly longer if I could. And in those first couple of weeks, I had a lot of issues. I got sore. The baby was latching, felt very strongly on top of me, and it didn't feel natural. Whereas now I know breastfeeding shouldn't hurt you. If you're sore all the time, or you have cracked nipples, or if you feel like you're in pain and someone's biting and pinching you, that's not how it's supposed to feel. It's just supposed to feel like someone's on top of you, just suckling. It shouldn't be painful. So I just want you, if you're watching this video and it's your first couple of days, first week, first month, and you're having struggles, I want to just let you know I'm at 14 months of breastfeeding, and it's great. I am so glad that I met the pediatrician that I met, the lactation specialist that I met, and women at support groups. There's so many resources for breastfeeding. And if you're not able to get those resources, YouTube obviously is a great resource because you could meet other women and you could hear their stories. So that's what I want to do. I want to provide my story. So my breast milk came in on the 3rd or 4th day, where it was just not the colostrum, which is the initial milk that comes out of you, but the actual heavier milk that's more like the milky white color. So I started breastfeeding, and I would put them on my breast, and it hurt. I noticed that my nipple started cracking, and I was in pain. And I realized this can't be. This feels worse than childbirth, and it shouldn't be, right? This is supposed to be the easier part. At least breastfeeding should be the easier part. It shouldn't be comparable to having a baby come out of you, right? So I contacted a lactation specialist, and even though I had met with the lactation specialist at the hospital, it's so different when you're home and you're by yourself and it's just you. And I grew up in a generation where myself and a lot of my cousins my age, we weren't breastfed, so our moms aren't able to give us that advice. So it's really learning it from my peers, learning it from my cousins and my friends, what did you do? How did you do this? But sometimes you don't feel comfortable because it's a very vulnerable position of asking these vulnerable questions to your inner circle. And you want kind of a third person who is not necessarily your relative or your friend, but they could give you this information and you don't feel any kind of way. So I met with the lactation specialist. She came straight to the house. And the great thing about lactation specialists, you can get someone covered under your insurance, or you could do it private. For my insurance company, you could get unlimited feedback from them via phone, but I just wanted someone to come home and see what I was doing and make sure I was doing it right. And I had someone come in. The first thing that she did was she weighed the baby. So we stripped the baby down. She put the baby down, we weighed him, and then I fed him a couple times while she was there. And then we checked his weight at the end, and we saw there was milk that he did drink. It didn't drink as much as she was planning or hoping, but she realized that he was doing non-nutritive sucking, which I believe that he was doing. Because when I would try to take him off, he wouldn't want to come off, and he'd always want to be on top of me and suckle. So I realized this was beyond regular breastfeeding, because it just felt all day in the first couple of weeks he was on top of me. And when she realized that's what he was doing, she recommended using a pacifier. People don't normally recommend breastfeeding moms to use a pacifier in the first 3 months, but because she could see how he needed this extra thing, she recommended it, and they didn't have any issues with him having nipple confusion over the nipple versus the pacifier. That wasn't an issue for me. I was lucky. And I told her like I had these cracked and sore nipples, and I put my own breast milk on the sore area because that's what I looked up and it said to do. And it was healing. So I stopped nursing him for 24 hours so I could heal. And she came while I was like in that healing process, and she was like, yeah, you did the right thing. Best thing to do is to put your breast milk and just let it heal. So that's what I did, and I gave him a bottle. And I think one breast was a little bit more okay. So I think I had him nursing on that side and not one side. And she basically said that what I was doing was right. You want to make sure that the baby's mouth is fully latching on, and not just the nipple, but as much as the breast as possible that could get into his mouth. And so you want the upper top of their mouth to be up, and you want it to just be like their whole mouth is just on top of you. So the upper top, you want that to be open, like on top, and you don't want it to be like they're puckering. So if they look like this, that's not what you want. You want them to look like their mouth is open and they're taking in the breast that way. So that was one thing that she said, like, I'm doing well. Another thing that I would do to make sure that his mouth was open, I would wait for him to like let out a good scream so his mouth was open, and I would pop the boob in. She was like, oh yeah, that's good. That's one way of making sure like their mouth is open. One thing that she didn't like that I was doing is that I was taking my finger and I was trying to like get his attention with my finger. And she's like, why are you doing that? And I told her like, oh, the pediatrician, suggested like just getting his attention. Like sometimes like they're nursing and then they'll stop nursing. And so it was like one way to get their attention is to like use your finger. And she's like, don't do that. He'll have issues with nipple confusion by thinking like there's another nipple out there. So I stopped doing that, and I would just take my nipple, the nipple that I was actually feeding him on, and like use that as a, hey, I'm still here, latch. And then after that initial visit, I didn't have to meet with her again. I took in everything that she told me. I took in everything that the pediatrician told me. The pediatrician was just pretty much like breastfeed on demand, put them on your breast as much as possible if you want to get off the bottle. Because I was still in the first maybe like 4 weeks, I was doing a little bit of both. And at first it was probably like 50-50 bottle formula versus breast milk. And then probably like less than a month later, I was at 100% breast milk. So that was great. By listening to both the pediatrician and a lactation specialist. And now I'm at 14 months later, and obviously he eats solid foods now, but we did exclusively feed him breast milk for the first 6 months, which is also recommended by the WHO, the World Health Organization, and I recommend it if you can. One of the things one of the lactation specialists in the hospital told me that will stay with me, and I hope it resonates with you. We wouldn't be here as a human species if it weren't for breast milk. So if you feel that you can't do it, just think about that. We as a species, 6 to 7 billion of us in the world, we would not be here. Our population would not be what it is if it weren't for breast milk. So I leave that with you, and I wish you all the luck in the world, and have fun breastfeeding.